Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Your your comedic timing is great. I love it. You have that
Well,
pregnant pause that works every time.
it's because 99.9% of the time in my life, I really don't know if I have anything at all to say.
And I totally admire and honor that skill set. I don't know about 99%, but I know at least it's in the 90s.
You have to know, Michael, that 78.7% of statistics are all made up on the spot.
Well, that's good. Actually, good to know. I can do that,
including that one.
and I can use that against people that are quoting statistics.
I'm telling you, you'd be surprised how you go, really? Of course, the response to that one is really.
Yeah. If you don't mind me, I need to share a kind of place where I'm at right now. I just found out by going to the coffee shop that two of my friends, acquaintance friends in my age group, passed away. And one of them I was a little bit closer to, relatively speaking. And I seen him on Thursday, and he was complaining something of lifting something in his belly and it hurting. And they found him at his home in the hallway, gone.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Well, I feel for you. My condolences. I know what you mean. When I was I told you, my fraternity brother put on that little reunion.
Yeah.
And one of the segments of that was all of the people that we knew who are not there anymore. They couldn't have come when they wanted to, and it was a little shocking how long the list was.
Okay.
So we're getting into that age.
Yeah, and then hi, Marco.
Hi.
It also just kind of I felt it dovetailed with John's talk about the transition of death space. I mean, there's death spaces we move through all the time, is the way I relate to them. And yeah, I've had some bad news in the last week, both on that and having a niece who was molested 15 years ago, find out that her own daughter's been molested by a family member. So I'm trying to practice good, whatever the fuck I'm supposed to practice.
You know what, Michael? Sometimes I think it's just me, but I think being pissed off is a perfectly normal state of affairs, and one's allowed to be that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that it's not all just goody two shoes shit, and it's not all bad. And some you get irate and you don't, and you feel joy and you feel pain, and we feel all of these things. It sounds really trite when you say, well, it all belongs to the to being alive, but it really does. I mean,
really does. Well, and I feel that the more that I'm open to it, the more skill I have when I do come to express being pissed off. It's not so there's care at the same time versus it was just a reaction.
Yeah. Being pissed off is not something to be pissed off about.
Thank you very much. I like that. I think that's the main thing that Zen keeps saying. You're complicating things. Just be what you are.
Yeah. So,
hi, Doug.
Hi, Doug.
Hello, fellas.
Long time no see, buddy.
Yeah.
About to say the same thing. How is everyone?
Fine. Is that your new office facility?
Or is that where you're hiding out?
The typical office. No.
See, I worked most places where we had cubicles. It's more like a what do they call those? Those big. I got all the German words. There's no English words coming.
Say it in German.
A Legebatterie. It's where they put the chickens to lay eggs. They put them in all those little cages, and then they can, and they turn the lights on and off and get them to lay more eggs and things. And
Well,
if a cubicle space in
mental
America is kind of like
that's mental rational.
that. I worked in defense for 10 years. It was insane.
I can assure you there's no hormone injection going on here. I hope not.
I was always hoping they'd come around and give me something that would ease the pain, but they didn't. So we got to go find it on our own.
It looks like you have a little altar or something behind you over there. Or, is that just
yeah, random collection of things. I found a really cool, being the nature boy that I am, I found a really nifty acorn I haven't identified yet.
Oh, that's good. That's a cool one.
Yeah.
See, that's a keeper.
A nice cat.
Like that.
That's almost bluish.
I'll walk from here to the adjacent cemetery as my excursions outside. And then there's a local college is where I usually set up because the Wi-Fi is better there. But I do have perhaps 45 minutes to an hour just to throw that out up front. So I think the most I haven't been online much, just for personal choice. I've been doing some background work trying to get the videos organized for cafes and the Savitri reading and other things. But it looks like we're just regrouping here for the most part. And the most in-depth post I noticed was maybe Marco was suggesting welcome committees or welcome cafes and alternate forms of the cafe and perhaps alternate times, which I just wanted to state up front, alternate times would be useful for me. I think from here on out until the end of the year, I'll have 1 hour of cafe extravaganza fun time. But so I wouldn't mind it being pushed an hour earlier or have different groupings or whatever, but I'm not the judge of that. So.
Well, I like the idea of
See everyone. Where'd you go, Michael?
Oh, sorry. I thought I undid that. Sorry. I like the idea of once a month having a welcoming cafe for people that want to participate. I just think that's part of the overall, helping people find their way in and participating. I'm just curious, do we have any, like Doug, I'm curious, what better times would work for you? And also try to think of Ed too, because he's in Germany. Have you thought about that?
No.
Okay. No, I
don't think anyone needs to think about it specifically. I can do like plus or minus an hour easily, plus or minus 2 on occasion, depending if with a little advance notice kind of thing. I'm not restricted to Tuesday. Friday's always a no-go, but the other days of the week, generally speaking, I'm relatively flexible. So, that is an option. I have a very democratic leaning, and I think if most of the people that wants to do something want to do it at a particular time, if it works for me, that's fine. And if it doesn't, well, that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
I don't feel left out because of that. I know nobody's plotting to do things.
Oh, shucks. We should be plotting.
I know you should be, but you're not. See, you guys aren't that fast yet. And I can also tell you, just to pick up on what Doug just said, I was offline for 16 days when I was in the States. And it was one of the most liberating times I've ever had. I mean, I really enjoyed the fact, not that I missed you guys, because that would have been fun, but it's so nice not to have to like check your mail. My phone was off for 2 weeks. And, so there was nothing. So all the crank calls I was getting from all the telemarketers and whatnot, they all stopped. And it's like, okay, well, you must have died or something, you know. So we're not getting through there. And it's real nice because now on the other end, you know, I can kind of slowly get back into things. And like that, I haven't read a whole lot because I've been trying to work through what all happened when I was in the States, because it was, you know, being my swan song, it was a different emotional charge on the whole trip than you would normally have otherwise.
Yeah. Well, all three of you guys have taken time off. It's interesting that I think, and it's nice to see that the people, you guys taking time off, because I think it's important as part of working with the technology. Marco took time off in July, and then Doug, I think it's refreshing for me.
It is. Well, it's refreshing for you because we're not there, but it's it's refreshing for us because we're not there either.
See this? That's a poke. That's a poke. You know,
I'm open to other times too. I have been trying to get into a rhythm with my weeks. I've come to a theory that freedom is measured out in weeks. It's measured out in how much control you have over your week. That's actually the unit, I think, of effective human freedom. So I'm trying to have good weeks, and there's a kind of cycle to each week. And from Monday through Thursday, I'm not in the rat race, but I'm in a kind of rat race because of projects that I'm committed to earn money that I need and my family needs to sustain our existence. So we have these dependencies, and one of my dependencies is on the technology. That's how I make a living. And so it's consequently difficult to disentangle myself, even to take a break, take a vacation. I don't think I've taken a true vacation, a true like retreat where people cannot reach me and I'm not trying to be reached and I'm not available. And I can just rest in, I can't remember when. I don't think I've done that in probably at least a decade. And on the one hand, I look forward to it. On the other hand, I think that part of the dependencies that we've created technologically, like they have a life to them that has to exhaust itself. Like you can't just take yourself out of a dependency path. You have to replace it with something else that fulfills the same need that the dependent thing originally fulfilled. So if that is for economic sustenance, then there has to be a replacement for whatever you're dependent on. And I think that, that probably applies to other domains too, socially and emotionally and interpersonally. And part of what keeps me coming back is that I want the cafe to stay alive. I want it to be there. Even if I can't participate in it, I think that it should exist. And that it provides in this sort of weekly ritual way, provides a context, for having certain kinds of conversations or for animating certain relationships, which otherwise wouldn't have a chance to come together. So that's why I keep showing up, even though I'm usually not able, I should rather say, or almost always not able to craft the content, the topic for the cafe. And I don't personally mind necessarily if there's like an energy there, if there's a reason to be there, then we'll talk about something and it will turn into something that fulfills the reason. I think that that's been part of the practice of doing these kinds of conversations. They're more in the spirit or in the tradition of generative dialogue, where one doesn't necessarily just have the information that you're downloading or that you're transmitting or teaching, and maybe not even the topic, maybe not even the content or the subject. It's something that emerges in the course of the interaction amongst the participants. But that doesn't mean it's without structure. It does actually maybe even have a greater structure, because in order to do that generative move, you have to refrain from other moves that are non-generative or more static. And so how to do that exactly, I think, is part of what we've been learning. And there's an improvisatory, I think, skill that is a part of even doing this, because we're performing on the one hand, but we're also not performing on the other hand. Right?
Yeah, another kind of, I'm just going to add I was listening to you, Marco, I'm going, it's a recovery project in a sense. We're recovering some old, new way, the ways that we've lost touch with. I mean, I'm kind of riffing off of the ancient wisdom. And so to me, it's regenerative, but the most of the work for me has been recovering and feeling good about my ability to even engage in dialogue, if that makes sense. So there's that regenerating, but I look at it as recovery because so much of my personal life, the way I've communicated has been a problem. And so I'm trying to recover that vital whatever of, in my way, relearning or learning anew a skillful way of bringing forth exchange of ideas or whatever.
I think that's probably not just personal. I think that that's something that's probably shared. I feel that as well. I don't know if how many opportunities does one have to talk where there isn't a particular agenda?
Exactly.
But there is a shared interest in a topic or theme or inquiry,
Yes.
or experience. So I think that's part of what we've been onto with the cafe, but it is messy, and it is.
Oh yeah.
It hasn't been like a well-produced podcast, with all of the trappings of.
But I actually honor, and I'm kind of, that's the juice I like. I sometimes like, let's jump in the mess and let's see what we do with it. But that's me. I'm a maintenance person. I'm always fixing.
There's lots to fix. So John, in his post, I think maybe one of the last ones on the open suggestions topic, posited two kinds of groupings. One was Group A, one was Group B. And Group A was, like he called it, Trumpist, manipulative, strategic. And then Group B was more open. And that there's a way to go from a Group A kind of situation to a Group B kind of situation where it's more generative. I would say maybe Group B is more generative. I don't know what meta has to do with that. It may or may not have something to do with it, like the going meta. I think death has something to do with it. I think that death as part of the equation changes maybe what one's desired outcomes are. So, but
Well, and
so where we're going with that, that's.
Well, I've been steeped in Gebser, and I'm on chapter 4 and section 3, and he talks about this in terms of anxiety being now this is the way I'm going to language it, the trigger for mutation. And around anxiety is this notion of death, because something is being left behind. As much as something's mutating, the old mutation maybe has run its course, whatever that was. And so I think that's why he specifically doesn't mean that the anxiety the death that we feel with anxiety is not necessarily the same as real death, but they have this resonance with each other, because for me, it really resonated when I read that, because it's about loss, and I've suffered a lot of loss over the years. And part of my movement, and why, to take your point, in getting better is actually working with the intensification, using Gebser's term, of the anxiety in a more skillful way. Now, it doesn't guarantee anything, but at least I'm not as beat up by it as I used to be. And there's a lot of people getting beat up from what we're experiencing in the world today, I would think, you know.
I think I agree, but there's an opportunity in there as well, which you just
Yes,
pointed
right,
out.
right.
You gain these things, and there have been more than one reference from more than one person in the threads that they're very hesitant to participate in this kind of thing. And, you know, like, that's why I thought this idea of a welcome cafe, or, you know, where there really is, it's just a chance to practice, you know, dip your toe into the water kind of thing. And find out, well, how do I interact, or do I want to interact? Do I even want to do this kind of thing? Would be very helpful, because some people have expressed interest, and it might be and it could be very well a timing issue in that regard. You know, that's not a good time to do that. Maybe it's something that has to, you know, float around for a while until you find something, you know, a time where people can do that. But the other side of that is knowing that it's there, knowing that there's a, you know, in the old scheme, you know, every Tuesday night at X, or afternoon or morning or whatever it is, at X time, people are going to be online and are going to be talking. There's a threshold you have to overcome to do that. But I thought, and I have thought all along, that that's the advantage of what we do, because whatever comes up is worth coming up because it came up, not because it was planned or somebody had an idea or we have to do this. Those are interesting as well. When someone says, "Can we all look at this and can we all talk about that?" Those are very helpful. But you know, we're operating on a whole variety of dimensions, or on levels, or whatever it is. You know, whether it's content wise or form wise, or because of the technology or whatever, and not everyone is willing to do that. You know, I've done enough of this all along that it doesn't matter to me. You know, the fact that people are there is enough, and that I know, and I kind of know what the limitations and advantages are of this, because I was an early adopter. I'm glad I don't have to be that anymore. You know, I can be the old curmudgeon. I don't have to do the latest thing. You know, but there was a time when I did. And I'm glad that I did, because you get to see a lot of the, you know, the pluses and the minuses and the advantages and the disadvantages, and what it can get you, and where it can't reach. You know, we have that as well. You know, it would be great if we all could sit down somewhere around a table and have a chat, but it's not physically possible to do that. So what do you do in lieu of that? And we do have folks, I mean, just the mere fact that all three of you, just in this conference, are in different time zones. And time-wise, I'm just in a different time zone too. You know, it's so, you know, like, it's all there, but it's not all, and it's all at the same time, even though it's not the same time everywhere. So, you know, and I find that fascinating. So if you can provide that opportunity for people who want to test the waters, or give it a shot, you know, and I really don't care if there are people on here that don't want to be seen video wise. You know, I've been in enough groups where they've been large, and I've been on screens like this where there's like 20 windows. You know, it can be very overwhelming if you're trying to look at all the windows, or if you're trying to find the details of the nuances. You have to approach it it's a whole different way of engaging with others, because you're not sitting around. But even if you're in a classroom with 20 people, most of the classrooms I've ever been in have been in rows. Of course, I come from the old school. At the Cathedral of Learning at the University of Pittsburgh, they have extremely small classrooms, extremely small. You can't get more than about 15 people in the seminar or a class. And for the most part, depending on the country, they're all country themed. They don't lend themselves to like moving tables around, or, you know, because everybody just kind of like has a chair that you can write on. So some could be in circles, and some might be in rows, and some might be all around the edges. They might be standing for all I know. It's interesting because they built small classrooms. So that, which kind of forces a certain amount of intimacy that you don't otherwise have. Your lecture, if you went to a lecture at the University of Gießen, where I studied here in Germany, it was in a lecture hall. Lectures didn't take place except in a lecture hall. So there was 150 to 300 seats. There might only have been 5 people in the hall listening to a lecture, which is also kind of an eerie feeling that you get. But you don't have that electronically here in the virtual world. We're just all in our rooms wherever we are, whether it's our office or a study or whatever. That's it. So it would be it would be nice if we could encourage more people to participate that way. I think that's one of John's frustrations. It's just us, and it would be nice to get some new blood. I'm not saying it's necessary, but it would be nice for some reason. I was a little disappointed he split it down to 2 groups, but.
I just want to, sorry, Marco, I just want to mention something before we go further, as probably the newest member of these 4. I've never felt unwelcome on this site. I just took my time of figuring out how I wanted to interact, whether I wanted to stay with reading or just watching the YouTubes. So I want to emphasize this because sometimes I feel that, now this is a personal bias, but there's only so much you can do to welcome people, and they have to take the jump. They have to decide if they're going to get involved. But I've never felt unwelcome on this site from anybody. So I just want to put that out there.
That's good. I do see, and I've got the feedback, and it's no secret that things are not the most clearly organized or the most user-friendly, and that to me is unfortunate, and I would love to fix that. And at the same time, I don't think it's been the most important thing. Like, I have a limited amount of time that I can dedicate to Cosmos in general, to Infinite Conversations, and to all these projects. And I tend to want to do the things that are more interesting, like talking or editing somebody's poetry or writing something that, creates beauty, creates something that will last. And I do appreciate, and I have a lot of respect for good design, good user interface, good mechanics, good engineering, all of that stuff. I think it's super important. And I think that if I put my attention on it, I would get good at it, and then it would be better designed. And if other people put their attention on it, it could get better. But that would mean not putting attention on other things. And so for me, I have to make choices on a daily, hourly, minutely basis where my attention is going to go. And I continue to believe that there's a substance to the conversations too, that it's not just a few guys getting together and chatting like that. Even when there isn't a focus to the conversations, there's a substance to them.
Just like right now?
Yeah, right now.
Right now. There's a substance.
And that, but it's subtle. It's a subtle substance, I think, sometimes. Sometimes it's more dramatic, and it gets emphasized in certain ways, and it has certain flights of coherence or of expressive potential or whatever it is. But I am most interested in the substance, and I'm most interested in what is it that has that transformative effect. Like, why is it that if some conversations liberate energy and they allow a kind of flourishing of the interiors, and other kinds of conversations close those down? And this happens to me with work, especially, that, because the parameters are around completing a project, delivering a product, earning money, satisfying a customer, And that's all a good discipline, I think. And there's something to the discipline of capitalism that is to be, is okay, I guess. But it also is like what it does to my heart is put it in like a compressed box, that then it takes me a very long time to unpack and to return to what I think a human being should feel like, which is some kind of flow with experience and some just freedom from self-interested types of concerns, because I think that part of what work is about and money is about is self-interest. Self-interest is good. I'm a self, you're a self. If we have to be interested in ourselves. Nobody necessarily is going to look out for us. Nobody's going to wipe our butts. Unless it's by consensual agreement, that's what we're into. But I think that part of what we've gotten into culturally, and civilizationally, in our time, and partly because of the codependencies with technology and what we've come to expect out of life because of what we're able to do with technology, is that we've become hyper self-interested, and we don't have a ground underneath us just to relax into. I know my family, I know my village, I know the land. We don't have that. We've actually been uprooted from those kinds of contexts. And it's not that we've been uprooted by it as part of the process of evolutionary unfolding, as human beings emerged out of the out of life, and had to migrate, and then had to find resources. We've always been in this struggle as humans, and now it's just taking another permutation in the technological. But I think part of what that has done is made us so hyper self-interested that it is very difficult just to be relaxed in an open heart and in presence with what is, because we're always concerned about what is not, what is yet to be, what we have to make happen in order to fulfill our survival needs. So
it's getting away from the polarity of the quality and the quantity. There's a polarity that we're living in because of what I understand of we're living in an age of obsessive, rational quantifying everything. And listening to you, Marco, I was resonating in the sense that, taking just as a point of departure that capitalism could possibly be looked at as to be of service and provide needs and stuff, maybe way back when originally, but now it's been hijacked by not just maintaining that value of providing a need, a service and stuff, but forgetting about that and putting it into banking terms, and yet we do need a sort of, like you said, we do need a sort of routine. We do need to kind of track, our time, even like you're saying, because if you want to, for me, I'm going to side with quality over quantity, but I'm not going to totally dismiss it, because I'm going to be there for my friends, but I may not be able to be there on time. The friend that I just lost, I seen him last week and he's gone. I feel fortunate that I took the time to hang out with him at the coffee shop. I hope I'm trying to, that polarity, that tension of trying to work with, well, how much time do I give a qualitary heart feeling to something, somebody, for myself as much as for other people.
I have the train going by, so I'm definitely not going to tell.
They're putting down new tracks right across the way from where I am, Marco. I can sympathize, because every 15 minutes, there's this siren announcement, whatever. I think they're just telling everybody, we got another half a kilometer of track late or something. I don't know. But so I can deal with that. I wanted to just say one thing about it's all kind of messy. You're not going to clean it up. I don't care how much time you put in it. I don't care how much you devote to it. I don't care how much you think you might be able to. You're not. It's going to stay messy. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's okay that it's messy. We have to learn to live with a certain amount of messiness.
Yes.
That's one of the things that our mental rational, if we want to use that Gibsonian kind of thing, everything has to be ordered. Everything has to have its place, everything, place for everything and everything in this place. And yeah, that's all nice and we find stuff. But if you look at all of your relationships, whether they're virtual or real, they're messy. They're just all messy. They're messy all the time. People react differently. They're in a different mood. They're this, that, and whatnot. So what you do, and this is what I do find that infinite conversation provides, it provides a structure. Yes, it might take you a little bit of effort to use the search bar to find what you're looking for, but you can find it. You just have to be willing to take a moment and do that. And if you're not, the problem's not with the site, because any site you go to, you have to go through that. Google is for me, the ultimate example, and it's the messiest of them all because they only show you what they think you want to see. It's not what I want to see. So I'm in this constant battle with them to find what I want or what I'm looking for rather than what they think I might be looking for. And so we can't account for those kinds of things. And what drives everything on this site is the content. It's never the form. It's never, it might be the poem here and it might be the reading there and it might be a cafe here. It might be this, that, one. That changes all the time. But the thing that keeps bringing people back, I believe, just from what I experienced there, is the content. There's always something of substance. You always find they're not acorns as big as the one that Doug found, but they're these little acorns that we piglets are really kind of rooting around for, and then we come up with them every once in a while. Oh, okay, boy, that was a tasty one. I'll go looking for another one. And then we do that. So, we can also impose upon ourselves more limitations than are necessary. And it is a real challenge. I can sympathize with you as well. When I was an independent contractor in California, when I lived in California, and I never had any vacation. I couldn't remember a time in there where I actually just like shut down or relaxed. I took days off. They were always in blocks, but I always knew when they were and things had to happen. Might have been around Christmas time. That's not a relaxing time. I don't know if anybody, when has Christmas ever been relaxing? There's all kinds of shit to do. But it's good shit to do. I've always enjoyed it when I was done. People were happy and people, even if things were a little rough around the edges at the time, but the meals were there and we sat around and we drank wine and we talked and there was interaction. There was life that was involved there. Life's messy. It's not organized. We're not going to get it cleaned up. I'd love to get it cleaned up. I haven't done it in 70 years. I don't think I'm going to do it in the next 70, that's for sure. I'm not even going to try anymore. It's just going to have to, there's going to be a certain amount of that there. And we have to learn to live with it as stating it too didactically, but that's just part of the deal. And so one focuses and one needs to focus on what one needs to focus on. And if it's at that time, when I was contracting, it was making a living. I always had to have a job. I always had to have a project. I always had to have some place, some means of generating income. And I managed to do that. But that wasn't what consumed me. There were other things. I had other interests. And I knew that if I wanted to pursue them, I had to bring up a certain amount of energy to do that. And so I did that. And everything seemed to work. But it wasn't anything I planned on. I can assure you all of that. That's why I consider the life that I led was an extremely fortunate life. I always got breaks when they needed to come. I was always surprised when I really had no clue what was coming next, something showed up. But a lot of that was, when you give up hope, things get a lot easier for you because, you literally, I believe this, since I gave up hope, I feel much better was my motto when I was living in because you're always wrapped up in something. And if you aren't, you'd be surprised what you do recognize. That was the thing. I don't think that all of this, the good fortune I had came to me because I was deserving or something. I think I simply got out of my own way and was a little more observant of things that were going on around me and was able to be aware of things that I hadn't been aware of before because I wasn't focused. Like you said, Margo, you can do this, but that excludes that. That's that's perspective in a nutshell. If you focus on this, you're not focusing on that. Well, stop focusing on this. And there's other things that are there. You really don't have to focus on much. We all have to focus on certain things. That's true. But we don't have to focus on as much as we think we need to focus on, I think is what I'm trying to say. And that allows that space or the time or the opportunity for other things to be recognized that are just there.
Well, Ed, and listening to you, the word that's coming to mind as I'm listening to you is trust. And trust you have to relax to trust. Now, the thing is once you kind of get the hang of relaxing and trusting, it doesn't mean you give up making plans, but your plans are like navigating from point A to point E, and you have this idea you're not going to get there in a straight line. No way. You're going to have to feel the underneath, but just like a sailor or when you're swimming, you have to trust what's underneath you. And that's where Gebser in the section I was reading was saying that anxiety and trust go together, but hope and fear, you need to chuck those things because that polarity will get you in trouble if you get stuck in trying to manage that polarity of fear and hope. But trust and anxiety, I resonate with that verbiage that he did because I have experienced that, especially the last 20 years trying to recover from my tractor accident. I had to deepen, relax, and trust whatever route I was going to go. And I had to go through a divorce. I had to change my relationship to my children. I experienced a lot of fucking loss, not only in terms of people dying, but of change. So trust kept coming up when you were talking.
It's interesting because when you were hesitating, right, you told me before, timing is everything. And you're not, the word wasn't kind of going, well, I think the word that he wants is trust. And then you say it because trust is one of those things you can't get hung up on.
No.
Hope you can. You can get so hung up on hope that you do nothing else, or fear is the other one where you become paranoid in the end. But trust is one of those things. And it's taken me a whole hell of a long time to realize, in retrospect, I can go, well, that's what I was doing. If you didn't ask me then, I was just like, well, I'm flying by the seat of my pants.
Oh, the seat of my pants!
Someone else.
Oh boy!
How does one do that, by the way?
I know.
How does one fly by the seat of their pants?
I'm trying to visualize.
Well, you're actually doing it. You just have to feel your seat. I mean, being in maintenance, we're always flying by the seat of our pants.
I know. John had made an issue of it, and that was my life. In Silicon Valley, that was my life. I had no idea where I was going, what I was doing, or why I was doing it. But it was in retrospect, it was one of the best times in my life. Not because it was a great thing that happened. It was because I actually survived that, and the family did well, and we all came out of it as more developed people in some way. You know, we were richer for it all, even though we weren't rich. But we, you know, everyone was gained something, and everyone talked. Now, when we're sitting around the table at, you know, Thanksgiving, Christmas, or whenever it is, those things come up. The 2 weeks I spent in the States, you know, we those were the things that we reflected upon. You know, what kind of experiences that we had, and where do we draw those from? And for us, you know, just, you know, the continental part of the family, because we were all there and then moved back here. It's kind of, well, there were very enriching experiences that we had that we're still drawing on today. But it's nothing that we ever could have planned for or targeted or tried to attain. They just came. And
well, I think this is where
a good way to describe that.
This is where trust and seat of the pants. I'll put it this way: the more I relax and trusted flying by the seat of my pants or moving by the, I had less accidents. Because one of the anxiety producing flying by the seat of your pants is you're trying to control everything. And the more you relax and enjoy kind of the snow, the ride down the snow and the sled, you know, you're less, I'm not saying you're not going to have an accident, but you're less likely to have an accident. You just, maybe it's a 50-50. You'll have an accident and you'll get down there and going, whee, all the way down.
I wanna repeat that. The we. Doug said he might have to go around 45 minutes or so, and I noticed he unmuted. So I feel like you were when you said you, I feel like you're talking to me personally. I'm not sure if that's true or not. Maybe that's a false assumption, but
no, it's the royal we you.
Okay, we you.
Yeah, I've lost track of time. The computer screen, not here, right there, but there's a computer screen beyond the screen here. So there's all sorts of screens, but this one shut off because it's been inactive for quite a while. So I don't have a time in front of me, which is nice. And I think that goes with the single word focus we have right now, or focus, trust. I like these single word ideas, and perhaps that can be a gateway into some of our future cafes, similar to the death cafe we had. The topic is death, but you can have infinite amounts of conversations around that single word or idea or theme. And I know my time away from the screen, I was still at work. I was still interacting with the daily life stuff, but I was taking time away from this specific site and online activity with friends because it did get to be overwhelming, and I had to narrow it down to what I had to do and what I could do. This came along with my son starting school, my 2 adults within the household starting a 3rd shift job. So a lot of shifts were occurring, and this month or so that I took off was refreshing. It was very fresh. My son likes to use the word fresh for a lot of things, but he makes sure, is this water fresh? Which usually means that it come from the refrigerator and is it cold? So it could be months old, but he likes the word fresh. And I think it can be refreshing to take a step back, no matter how small of a time frame it is. And while we're sitting here talking, I was thinking about when I first entered the site, when I got involved with the cafe a little bit more and the conversations here, and when Michael joined in, which was another kind of death cafe on suicide, when Anthony Bourdain had his episode, and it was out in the public, so we felt we should talk about it. And I guess going back to the beginning of the conversation, I guess for you guys it's on this side, but if we're doing the timeline, this is the beginning. And in the beginning of this conversation, we were honing in on what time would be best, or how can we welcome people, or maybe what wasn't mentioned, which Marco mentioned in the post, was perhaps maybe morning or after work hours for certain individuals would increase the participation rate. But that means processing videos and all other sorts of things, which kind of caused me to need to take a break in the first place. And so I like working with what we've got here. I like working with the core individuals we have, and anyone that wants to join anytime, that's great. And I like the messiness. The messiness is what makes this setting, even not just the cafe, but all of Infinite Conversations. It's a big mess, and it needs to be that way, and it needs to stay that way. And if somebody wants to make it more structured, then there's always that compartment that can be structured. But there's always going to be, I like what you're saying, Ed, there's no stopping the mess, and to be anxious about it, or to be unable to mutate out of the mode of constant fix means that you're missing the opportunity that lies right in front of us, and that's these conversations. And yeah, if I have to go now, I guess I'll leave with that comment of, if we can't come up with any themes, then just simply have one core word out there, whether Death Cafe or time, which we focus on time and space all the time, but even something like
Erotic.
Yeah, there you go. So,
Erotic.
or I'm interested in the unconscious and how that
Yeah.
develops into many different things. So just throwing a word out there doesn't mean we have to read up on anything. I think a lot of us are overloaded, or bringing it into the community. And that's one thing perhaps I'll close with, is the time I did have away, I focused more on my actual work. And I work one-on-one with individuals, trying to help them get back on their feet and get reacclimated to society's demands, which includes getting back to work and getting a car or whatever it might be. But to best communicate with these individuals, it was very funny. I keep my dream journal, which I've been keeping for about a year. I keep that on my desk now, and that started 3 deep conversations that I wouldn't have normally been able to have if they felt more comfortable that I shared my personal experiences. And with the engagement online with all of you, it's really helped out. So bringing out to the real world. So great to see you guys.
It was good to see you too, Doug.
Good to see
We're way over our storage limits on Zoom. I think we have to. Anyway, that's another matter. We'll just download a bunch of.
Oh, I've cleared out a lot of stuff.
Oh, good. All right, good. Good to see you.
Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.
Here, Doug.
Later. I think he raises an interesting point. Sometimes it's just a word or an idea or a notion. It doesn't, really doesn't. It's amazing what comes out of that. When you start to think about it, because I don't know a lot about a lot of things, and the older I get, the more I realize I don't know. And anytime somebody brings it up, I really found this interesting, this whole death motif that was kind of running through the last couple of posts there in the thread. I haven't caught up on everything that was there. I probably never will. But I found it interesting because it's all worth thinking about. There's nothing that's not worth thinking about, so to speak. And if you let that happen, everyone has something to say about it. And what they have to say comes out of their experience, not necessarily out of what they've read somewhere.
Yes. Exactly.
I enjoy what we read, and that we can discuss what other people think about it. It's no critique of Mr. Kingsley, for example. He has his thoughts on how things were, but I don't know in a lot of those cases what my own thoughts are. So right. I think about it. There you go. And it's because, a word dropped here, or an image dropped there, or a metaphor, or a story, or whatever it was. And we pick up on that. And I start I find that throughout almost everything that I do, in the time in between we sit down and talk about these kinds of things, I find myself thinking about them, reflecting on them, letting them work, and then other things pop up, and then I start getting more, connections to other things that I'm doing, and it helps round out whatever it is that I think I am as well.
Yeah, and what I like about especially the core group and what I've taken away is I'm just adding to you, Ed, is sharing the experience of reading without thinking we have all the understanding of some book or something, but the experience. I mean, this is one thing I've really, because sometimes the people I relate to, they don't understand, or they don't share that reading experience is very, just as much as real to me as going out and catching a bus. I mean, I'm just trying to put it in those terms. There's it's a different kind of experience. I won't, I'll acknowledge that, but it's still an experience, because what reading activates in me, we had that one thread about the body and reading. And this is one thing that I like, is that, yeah, I've read a lot of stuff, but in listening to both of you and Doug and John, and some of it crosses over, some of it is a connection to another author that I read through Watts, but this other author has a different take on it, and they're sharing their experience of that author's view. I think, I guess in a nutshell, I'm saying that I agree with Tom Robbins, who's an author, and he's a persnickety hippie, but he won't claim to be. But reading, the reading experience to him, he writes because he wants people to experience his words.
Mm. I would like to change topics, or propose a couple of different topics. One, the ship of death motif is something I would like to continue talking about, or maybe do a cafe on ship of death. That image, which John has introduced, and it's from a poem by D.H. Lawrence. And I've read the poem. I think it's probably somewhere on the forum. Google it, or no, don't Google it. Search it on the forum, or Google it. But I think it's on the forum too. It's, to me, it's it's a beautiful image, and I wonder what, like, just in a very imaginative way, like, what would be on our ships of death? What would our ships of death?
Well, can you quote at least a paragraph from the poem so that I have a context?
I'll bring it back. I don't have it right in front of me.
Oh, okay.
But
well, I can go with
that. That was just by way of putting a bookmark on that particular topic, because Ed also pointed it out, that theme is, and it's fall too, so it's in the air.
Yes, right.
I went for a walk with the girls the other day, and just around the park, but the wind was blowing in a particular way, and the air was dry, and the leaves were falling and sort of blowing, and there was this sound. There's a feeling that you only get around now, and it's that sense of a vast desolation, like a vast emptiness, a vast nothingness, like that is consuming life. And I'm just putting that, I mean, that's the impression I get. That's like a feeling tone.
That's very good. That's very good. Okay.
Well, I would like to go further into that, but I have another question. I have a question I actually like to ask, particularly both of you, but also Ed in particular, because he just was in the United States of America. And part of, I think, this death motif is also tied to our politics and to what's going on in the world. We've done a couple of talks already on the climate crisis. We've talked about Greta Thunberg. There's been, I'd say, even just the last couple of months, it seems like a spike of concern, for this larger ecological situation, this kind of like larger ecological death that as a humanity or as a species we're facing. And I wonder, like, I mean, and part of it too, what's on my mind is that we're moving into 2020. There's an election coming up in this country, and there's an impeachment that's going to occur most likely. Something is going to come to a head, like, and I'm very interested in what that looks like, what that means, or what's going to happen. I mean, curious, and I'm curious what, Ed, your view is coming from Germany, and there's obviously a lot going on in Europe as well around this time. There's the Brexit decision, to be made in Syria, there's a military incursion being made by Turkey against the Kurds. And I learned recently that there's a very interesting social experiment going on in northern Syria, northwestern Syria, with a group called the Rojava. And they're a group that is, I mean, it's not just a group, it's like 300,000 people that are organized into small cooperatives. And a lot of them are led by women. And there's an ideology or a philosophy of democratic confederalism and cooperativism and feminism in northern Syria, and surrounded by hostile forces from Syria itself, although they're kind of actually working with Assad right now to defend themselves from Turkey. But there's also Kurds in Iraq, in Iran, and they're doing this amazing social experiment that is potentially revolutionary. But as of last week, the United States Trump pulled military out of northern Syria, and so that's allowed Turkey to invade. That could crush that movement. That's very concerning. So there's like a lot going on in the world. Like even though it's all empty in a certain way, even though it's all a dream in a certain way, to me that's very compelling. And I've mainly kind of refrained from a lot of reading news and a lot of following what Trump's doing this day or that day, because there's nothing new actually about a lot of that news. But I think something new is coming, and I'm interested in exploring what that really is. Like what's actually happening now, like what's coming through in the world on the political scene and culturally, and like with real people that, other parts of the world that are doing interesting things that, we could give attention to. That story, like about the Rojava and the cooperatives, is not very well told. It's one article that I found in a few YouTube videos, but it's very interesting. So that's just kind of where I'm wanting to go. And I have maybe till the bottom of the hour. I have a meeting at the top of the hour, so I think I should get some lunch before then. So maybe another 30 minutes for me.
Okay, that's good. We have to do whatever we can do whenever we do it. It was interesting for me going back to the States from outside, because I have a view that's developed from what I've experienced as long as I've been here. I told this to Michael because we've talked in the meantime. For me, the most fascinating part of my trip is that my family was separated at the border. My wife was sent off by herself. She's in a wheelchair. She can't negotiate through the airport, so we had mobility assistance. And the whole family's supposed to be able to go through with her. And the border agents told us to get out of there and to go away. And my son-in-law has a Canadian passport, so he wasn't allowed, according to the people that were telling us, to go through the line where the Americans go. He has to go through the foreigners' line. And I was left all by myself to go through the American line, which was the longest line. It was the harshest line. It was the loudest line. It was the one with the most orders. It was all of them got through. My wife was through in the baggage area. My daughter-in-law, my daughter and my son-in-law and grandson were in the baggage area long before I showed up, because I had to go through with the others. And there was this feeling. It's not like, well, welcome home. This feeling was, you're here now and you'll do what you're told. And that came across exceedingly strongly when I got in. And for the whole time was, I'm not a big news. I'm like you. There's nothing new in the news. I don't know why they call it. I know why they call it news, but it's not news. Because it's all predictable. You know what's coming. You knew the moment that Trump said that we're withdrawing our troops, that Turkey was going to invade. That had to happen. My part of the question that comes before that is, why is America there to begin with? Why is there a military force in a sovereign nation somewhere else in the world supporting whoever they think they should be supporting for whatever reasons they think they are? Isn't it that we are supposed to be recognizing the rule of law and how things are arranged internationally? Well, we don't. So there's this chaos that gets generated, and it's exceedingly, it's violent because it's military, it's bombs, and it's threats. But in spite of all that, and that's the part that I find fascinating, in spite of all that, we have these movements like the Wahhabite. And in the United States, in spite of the hyper-capitalism that you always hear about, the number of, quality of, and efficiency and effectivity of the cooperatives that are popping up in America is absolutely mind-boggling if you can find out about it, which you can't do. So there's like these realities that are, kind of counter-currenting each other in some way. Because when I talk to my families, and they all do the best they can to get by. They don't, other than my one brother who's he's an election judge, they call him, in Pennsylvania. So he helps and supervises what goes on at the polling places or whatnot. But he is completely disillusioned with the system of justice. He said that it doesn't exist anymore. He goes, I don't know why I do some of the things that I do, because we don't have a system of justice. We just live in a state of injustice. Oh, well, that's pretty shitty. And he goes, well, yeah, but it's not my everyday. The everyday is, making sure that the leaves get, collected, and we take care of the doors and the windows and the maintenance on the house and all of those kinds of things. He's retired in the meantime, so he doesn't have to secure his living. But his wife is still teaching. She's going to retire next year and is actually being forced out by the superintendent because he doesn't like her. It's not because she isn't a good teacher. It's not because she doesn't do things. It's not because the parents don't like her. It's that he doesn't like her. So she's going to be pressured to move. So it comes down to, in a sense, the messiness of life itself. This is what I saw. This is why when you were talking about the site and what you'd like to see and how this should be, and maybe we ought to have them, it's not going to happen because life is freaking messy. It's just all messy. And it doesn't matter whether the person that's in charge isn't really in charge or what's going to happen. There's a lot of consequences that can. When you have an impeachment going on and an election, and the impeached president will be elected, you have to ask yourself, why are we doing all of this? What's this all about? Because we know that everyone's become very resistant, almost immune, numbed to facts. Facts don't convince anybody anymore. You just make up your own. That was that whole alternative. Well, we have alternative. He started the whole thing right at the beginning. They're all alternative facts. And it was never challenged. It was never really opposed. No one in the media ever stood up and said, well, then that's bullshit. Nobody's calling bullshit anymore. And so when no one calls bullshit, you don't even have anything that you can really talk about, let alone, to appease the messiness in some way. Because what we would like are a few points of certainty within that mess that we can still rely on. And I see that those are going away. it to a certain extent. And that's why we have a situation like in Syria. Syria is, to me, prototypical of that. It is a complete mess. I might not like the fact, and I might think it's wrong that America was there, but it's even more wrong to betray the people that helped you. That's even more wrong. And the reason that Mr. Erdogan is, I had to think, you know what I had to think of when I think of Erdogan is, what's the guy, Zimmerman in Florida that killed that guy? Because he felt threatened. And that was enough. To feel threatened was enough to justify killing another human being. And I just saw an interview with the Turkish ambassador to Germany in television, where the interviewer said, you know, well, why are you doing this? Is because we feel threatened by the Kurds. They feel threatened. They aren't threatened, but they feel threatened. And feeling threatened is enough to justify doing this. And so now we have against, Merkel's never going to say anything. Germany's never going to commit to whatever. Macron's trying to make a point because he has his own interests of what's going on in Europe. So he invited a Kurdish delegation to the Palais and talked to them or whatnot just to piss Erdogan off, which it did. But Erdogan didn't fulfill any of the threats against France that he had already said that he was going to do if they did that, you know. But Germany's still going to kowtow, and who's the leading provider of weapons to Turkey? Germany. So they're selling them arms. They're, you know, well, you can't be doing it, and you just look. Well, it's just a mess. You don't know what you want. You don't know how you feel about it. You have no position on anything. So we're going to end up with this mess. Now, the one point that I do disagree with you on is those movements, what those people are doing down there is going to happen anyhow. Because that mass cooperative movement, mostly women-led, which I find absolutely, positively the beacon of hope in it all. If you look at the area where they were doing that, it's been a mess for a long time. The Iraqis were screwing around in there. The Syrians are screwing around in there. Nobody likes the Kurds. The Kurds are their own kind of people. And we're doing this in spite of everything that's going on around us. That was, to me, is the hallmark of what we have there now. In spite of everything, Turkey's threatening us. Syria was threatening us. Iraq was threatening us. Iran is threatening us. Nobody wants to have them there. They would like to have their own country. Think what you can about nation states. I don't care. But you have a whole group of people that are saying, in spite of all of this, we're still going to live our lives in a way that is probably sustainable even after the others collapse. So they've already started a foundation. They're already gaining experience. They're internalizing ideas and concepts and mechanisms that we talk about. And wouldn't it be nice? And is it possible? But they're doing it. So we need to look at those kinds of things more closely if we can, and that's the problem, if we can find the information to do it. You know. So within the mess, there are always these cells, factions, groupings of stability. In the greatest chaos, there's points of calm. And if we can find them and root them out and engage them, then I think we have chances for our own well-being because we can learn from what they're doing. And you know, to me, one of the most outstanding features of human beings, and I'm not an exceptionalist, but what makes humans different than all other animals is we can learn from others' experiences. Be they human or not human, we can learn from those experiences. And other species can't do that yet. I think they probably will one day, but not yet. So, and as long as we have that, I don't think we're using that ability to its maximum. We could be doing more. We could be gleaning more out of this. And so we have to learn. Now the old hippie's going to come out. We have to learn how to subvert. Yeah, we have to learn how to subvert the system and do what we want to do anyhow, in spite of them, because they don't matter. They really don't matter.
So you're talking about Kent State putting the flower in the gun?
For example, You know, that's one of those little symbolic gestures that,
symbolic.
yeah, it was, yeah, but it made an impact. It changed the minds of a lot of people.
Changed the momentum.
And it changed momentum. And it's these small, inconsequential, unexpected gestures that make it the minor gesture.
Yeah.
You guys, it is that kind of, they are significant. We can't ignore them. We shouldn't ignore those, and we should be always open to the opportunities when we ourselves can, you know, express one of them.
Yeah, I think that's important, given that we, as human beings, also with the technology, we're not just witnessing our own lives, we're socially witnessing what's happening on the planet. And so there is this tension that can overwhelm us of those both those activities taking place. And all of us from time to time, but me, you know, I'll just speak with me. Sometimes I have to just retreat, not to escape, but retreat, regroup. And when I ride the bus, I see simple acts of human kindness. Mm-hmm. And those seeds, like you're talking about, Ed, refresh me so that, yeah, I still have to engage in a social witnessing and what we're doing here, being aware of what's happening around the planet. Bottom line, it comes down to me of a mystical, deep trust that if I just work with my little field and honor its connection to the larger field, that's all I can do. That's all I can do. And not contribute or build or contribute to a momentum that is creating more chaos that you're pointing to. I don't want to create more chaos. You know, no,
there are enough chaos out there. I
just have to deal with the little chaoses that show up day to day.
Yeah.
Well, it seems the chaos is part of the opportunity. I mean, part of what allows a network of women-led cooperatives to emerge is the fact that there isn't already a very developed structure on top of it. Like, in a way, this is a conjecture. Could be easier to do something like that, even in a war-ravaged place like northern Syria, than in a relatively stable place like North America, precisely because it's relatively stable. And that, you know, where we're looking for what's next in evolution, maybe we're looking in the wrong place. Maybe we're looking at Western Europe and Scandinavian politics and, you know, some kind of like conscious capitalism or something like that. But really what's next will come out of a place much more unexpected, like where the Rahaba are. So I will share that article because I thought it was really interesting, and I guess I'm feeling my own attention drawn more toward the world, and I think that there's something to explore about the world and the body, like how we hold the world in our embodiment. I think that part of what just this is obvious, but the way that we're physiologically and neurologically impacted by the news that we read, but at the same time, it's part of it is a perception, like part of it is a construction. I see an article or video that's written by somebody using words to create an impression of what a reality is, someplace where I can't physically witness it. But part of it is also actually just perception. Like when I read that article about the Rahaba in northern Syria, I'm actually perceiving the Rahaba in northern Syria. I'm not physically there, but that becomes a reality that is as real as any other reality. Just like you were talking about reading earlier, Michael, the experience that you have reading a novel, a work of whatever, an essay, a poem, is as real, even though it's a lot more subtle and it's a lot more personal than the experience of boarding a bus downtown.
Yeah.
And I guess I have my own, like I have a kind of desire, like I have a desire to embrace the world, like that there isn't a feeling that those people are out there and they don't matter, or that what's happening in the larger scope of things or on the meta level doesn't matter. I think that there is some way that it can be very abstract and it can be very kind of alienating, like
Right.
because you could go into just your stories about what's happening and all the different geopolitics and the game of it, and at a certain point it becomes irrelevant because it doesn't immediately affect your everyday life. But what if it actually does? I mean, what if, because it is real, even though it may just be an article you flipped through, but the fact that you've been exposed to it makes, and that you perceived it,
Exactly.
now it's a part of your world, and now in a way you have a responsibility for it. That's the thing.
You're saying it's a part of your world, and I think what's coming online, and especially coming back to the body, is we've spent a lot of time through the last 300 years of participating as observers that could abstract. And there was a usefulness that I'm not going to deny that, but we've reached the limit of, no, we have to come back in and participate, even with what we've learned from the abstracting. We have to, like Gebser, I was just reading, we have to retract our projection of our nervous system as machines and technology, retract it, and so that we can better use it. Jeremy talked about that. So that's what it's about. How are we participating? We're at a mental rational participate, and it's reached a certain fucking limit, but the participate, this has been an ongoing thing from Gebser, if I understand, when we went through on the arcadic, that it's how are we participating? And these structures are the magic, the mythical, the arcadic are still there. But the mental or the rational has tried to, how do I put, Ed, would you help me with this? I'm not sure how to go with that.
Order it.
I don't know if I can pursue your train of thought.
Okay.
But I think what we've done mental rationally is abstraction, as you said. And what we've done in that abstraction is distanced ourselves. And that distance no longer, we can't be distant any longer. We're affected by things whether we like it or not. We're affected by things that we don't know anything about, just like we're affected by things that we do know about, but are far, far away. Just like, Marco, your example with the Rojava. And who would have thought that it's there? And a more obvious kind of example from the other side, the reason I couldn't make the last cafe, I went to a talk, and it was about what they call the Sea Bridge. There's a movement, an organization that's trying to help refugees that are coming across the Mediterranean Ocean towards Europe. And it turns out that the border to Europe from Africa is the deadliest border in the world right now. There are more people dying there than anywhere else. And there is an active policy by the European Union to prohibit them coming across. So they're stopping ships from coming across the Mediterranean, knowing full well that the people that are on these ships are probably going to die. So it's kind of it's an active, passive kind of murder that's taking place. Now, one of the big problems in that area is that anyone that gets picked up in Libyan waters gets taken to camps, and they're doomed to death in those camps. They're never going to get out. They're going to be there. Well, that's because Libya is not a functioning state any longer. And Libya is not a functioning state any longer because the United States and NATO decided that it shouldn't be one. we've created a mess that we now can't help. Now, in light of all that, the captain of one of the ships who landed in Italy is now on trial, could go to jail for like 20 years for bringing refugees into Italy. So she's probably going to be punished for this. In the midst of all of this, the Protestant Church of Germany just announced about 2 weeks ago, they are outfitting a ship to go to the Mediterranean and pick up refugees. In spite of that, so what we're having, even in a more structured environment, this is opposed to the Hava, where we're in an unstructured environment, we're doing things anyhow. Now there's this open resistance too, and this goes back to my hippie days, where sometimes you just have to get up on your hind legs and say no, regardless of what else is going on. And I do see, in spite of all of the harshness and the tone of a lot of things that I heard when I was in America, and my reception when I got there, there's a lot of people who are just saying, I'm fed up. They're very small and they're very isolated. They haven't really connected up yet. They haven't coalesced in any way, but they're there. And it has to do with climate, and it has to do with militarism, and it has to do with the impeachment. It has to do with all of these things. Many of them isolated, not knowing that they should be together. The movements themselves need to have more coherence. I just read an article here recently where the peace movement in Germany approached Greta Thunberg and the environmentalist movement, the Fridays for Future. They have protests every Fridays and whatnot, because the biggest polluter on the planet is the military. And Fridays for Future says, no, we don't want you around. You're just going to detract from our message. So, normal human activity. I don't like you. You don't like me. Sooner or later, we have to get over this and what are we actually talking about? What do we mean? And so the coalescence will come later. It's not there yet, but you can see all of these things bubbling. And now that you can see that there's attempts at interaction, to me, that's a normal state of affairs. That's kind of how I think that the world works. And so at some point, that does coalesce, because and it's going to be a minor gesture. It's going to be something like putting a flower in the barrel of a gun at Kent State, even though 4 people get killed. It's going to go, oh, wait a minute, maybe we do have something in common. And maybe it would be better if we worked together. And when that happens, the powers that be, or the established structures, do have a problem, because this is the quantity quality thing that you're wrestling with Gapser at the moment. All of a sudden, the quantity becomes a quality that you have to deal with. And you will deal with the quality. Quantities are easily dealt with. Qualities aren't. Yeah. And once it becomes a quality, then they've got a problem.
Yeah.
And I see, don't get me wrong, I'm still a curmudgeon. I doubt it's going to happen in my lifetime. But it would be nice if it did. Okay. But it would be nice if it did. Okay. But I do see tendencies in that direction. And I think, that's where I gain whatever little hope I have as the optimistic curmudgeon, that it is possible, and maybe even before. It might be in my lifetime. I would be perfectly fine with that. I
just want to go back to Marco's point when he brought in the aspect of the body. I think one of the reasons the body is getting reintroduced is it's our Achilles heel, that we have not learned how to actually trust the wisdom of the body. And by doing that, that's why the body gets activated and we have violence, and we act, we feel, like you said, oh, we have a feeling of threat, and just based on that feeling, we have to act like a stupid idiot and with violence. No, you can feel threatened and not necessarily act stupid, but you have to actually learn in the body how to negotiate that feeling of threat without coming from a reactive pattern. I know so well that I've had to change that reactive pattern. I mean, I walk around, personally, this has been my skill. I can walk around and feel that threat, and now I don't blindly feel like I have to act on it. I'm going, well, what basically is it telling me? Well, I can tell there's somebody there that for some reason I need to at least pay attention, not act. Maybe the act is to pay attention and not take physical action.
Just to throw in one thought there, part of the problem that we have right now, when we talk about the body, we generally tend to speak about our own individual body.
That's a good point, Ed. That's a very good point.
And the body that needs to react is the body politic, or it's the I'll call them the more ethereal bodies. That, you know, they might be the etheric that tend to be connected in different ways than our physical bodies are. Since we've been taught for the last 300 years that my body has nothing to do with your body, even though
exactly,
we share the
Ed, that's a very good point. Thank you.
Right, and so we need to also kind of focus that the body, that whole body talk is necessary, but we don't want to get it trapped, which is what's happened to us. And I think in the last 300 years is we got trapped in our own bodies, and that's not where we want to be.
Yeah, because of the objectification of life itself, we've objectified it.
Yeah,
and so you actually help support the way that of me not getting trapped in my body, but honoring and paying attention to the subtle body, or whatever you want to call it.
Right. Like we haven't developed that vocabulary and language.
Yeah, exactly.
Dealing with that, which is also something we could be working on or thinking about in our cafes.
That's a good point.
Well, yeah, Wilbur has some language around that. He calls it the gross body, the subtle body.
Yeah. All Aurobindo does, Wilbur does, Steiner does. They all talk about it in slightly different ways, but they're talking about something that's other than just physical.
Well, and this is this ancient wisdom that's been around. It's actually wisdom that's been around.
It doesn't matter if it's been around, nobody looking at it.
Yeah, well, but I'm trying to I'm advocating for Kinsley because he's trying. That's where he's pointing is, you know, like you pointed out, Ed, the last 300 years, we just haven't let that in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's time to shift gears a little bit, shift our focus, look at other things, open up. You know.
Yeah. You got to go, Marco, right?
Yeah, I should. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Yeah, it's good to see you both.
Yeah, it was good to see you again.
Welcome back and welcome away from America.
Yeah, wherever. Yeah, well, it is. It's a good place to be from.
I hear you.
Hey, we want to just end it at this time, Ed?
Yeah, fine with me. I'm easy. I'm always easy.
Yeah, that's what she said.
You're going to start that. My brother was into that all day. I can't tell you how many times he said that when I would say things. You know. Yeah.
Okay. Peace.
All right.
Peace.
Bon appetit.
Bon appetit. We'll see you next week.
Buongiorno.
Yes, and
Next week.
have a good meeting.
Arrivederci.
All right. Okay. Auf Wiedersehen.